I used to think love was the one thing that could never betray me. That was my innocence, my foolishness, the part of me that believed promises meant forever and loyalty was unshakable. Back then, I was the kind of girl who built her world around another person, who thought giving everything meant you would get the same in return. If only I had known how wrong I was. I was 23 when I met him. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I was finishing my degree, working part-time at a small bookstore, and dreaming of the future like most girls my age do. He entered my world so suddenly it almost felt like fate. It was a rainy evening, and he came in to escape the weather. His shirt was damp, his hair dripping, but his smile was the kind that made the whole room feel lighter. He bought a book he probably never intended to read, and we spoke for only a few minutes. Still, something in the way he looked at me made it feel like those minutes could stretch into hours. When he left, I thought that was it, just another customer passing through. But the very next day, he came back. This time, he stayed longer. And the day after that, he returned again. It didn't take long for me to fall for him. He had this effortless charm, this way of making me feel like I was the only girl in the world. We would walk for hours, talk about dreams and plans, and share meals in small cafes that became our secret places. I told him things I had never told anyone, my fears, my insecurities, my hopes. He promised me he loved every piece of me, even the broken parts. For a while, everything was perfect. He'd wait for me outside the bookstore when my shift ended, holding a cup of coffee just the way I liked it. He'd surprise me with little notes tucked inside the books I was shelving, words that made me smile so wide my coworkers teased me about it. He told me I was his future, that he wanted to build a life with me. I believed him with every beat of my heart. But slowly, almost too subtly for me to notice at first, things began to change. It started with small things, calls that went unanswered, messages that took hours or days to get a reply. When I asked, he said he was busy with work, stressed, tired. I wanted to believe him, so I did. I told myself love meant trust, and trust meant giving him space. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that something wasn't right. That voice grew louder the night I saw him walking across the street with another girl. I hadn't planned to see it. I had finished work earlier than expected and decided to grab dinner before heading home. I was crossing the road when I froze. There he was, laughing with her, his hand brushing against her arm like it belonged there. She leaned close to him, too close, and he didn't move away. My heart felt like it had been ripped out, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away. I wanted to run up to him, demand an explanation, scream that he was mine. But instead, I stood there in the pouring, hidden in the shadows, watching the man who had promised me forever share his smile with someone else. That night, I cried until I couldn't breathe. I replayed every moment in my head, searching for signs I had missed. Had I been blind all along? Had every word he spoke been a lie? By the time the sun rose, I was exhausted, but one thought was crystal clear: I couldn't keep pretending. The next day, I confronted him. My hands were shaking, my voice breaking, but I asked him the question I never thought I would: is there someone else? He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he would deny it. I thought he would hold me, reassure me, tell me I was imagining things. But he didn't. His silence said more than words ever could. And when he finally spoke, his answer shattered me completely. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said. You're amazing. You've given me so much. But she gives me things you can't. Stability. Security. She understands parts of my world you don't. It felt like my chest had collapsed. Every dream we had shared, every promise, every plan, it all crumbled in an instant. I wasn't enough for him. I should have walked away then. I should have turned my back on him and never looked over my shoulder again. But love makes you foolish. Instead of letting him go, I begged him to stay. I told him I would do better, that we could fix it, that love was enough. And he agreed. At least, that's what he let me believe. For a while, things seemed to return to normal. We laughed again, we spent time together, and I convinced myself he had chosen me. But deep down, I knew the truth. Once trust is broken, it doesn't heal. It lingers like a wound that never closes, and every little thing reopens it. It wasn't long before I found proof that he was still seeing her. Messages on his phone, little details he slipped in conversations, excuses that didn't add up. My heart didn't even break this time, it hardened. The tears didn't come. Instead, a cold calm settled over me. I realized I wasn't just a victim of his betrayal. I had power too. That's when the idea of revenge began to take shape, not the kind that harms, but the kind that makes someone face the truth they try so hard to hide. I didn't want to hurt him physically. I wanted him to feel what I had felt. I wanted him to see himself through my eyes, stripped of all the charm and lies. So I played along. I smiled when he spoke sweetly, nodded when he made promises, pretended I still believed him. Inside, I was watching, learning, waiting. Every secret meeting, every lie, every detail, I collected it like pieces of a puzzle. He thought he was in control, but really, I was the one holding the strings. The first step of my plan was simple: distance. I started dressing differently, carrying myself with more confidence, surrounding myself with people who lifted me instead of tearing me down. I stopped asking him where he was, stopped waiting for his attention. Instead, I gave him just enough to keep him guessing. And it worked. Suddenly, he was the one chasing me. He called more often, asked where I was, grew jealous of the time I spent with others. The irony wasn't lost on me, he had wanted more than me, and now he feared losing me altogether. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I wanted the moment to sting, to brand itself into his memory forever. I wanted the girl he had betrayed to be the girl who finally stood taller than his lies. So I planned it carefully, waiting for the perfect time. That time came on his birthday. He expected me to plan something special, and I did, but not in the way he imagined. I booked a quiet restaurant, arranged everything to look like a romantic evening, and made sure he felt secure, certain that I was still the girl who would do anything for him. He arrived smiling, confident, dressed as though he was about to win me over again. I played the part flawlessly, laughing at his jokes, holding his hand, letting him think he was the center of my world. Then, when the moment was right, I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. On the screen were the pictures I had gathered, him with her, the stolen glances, the nights he claimed to be working late. His face drained of color as he scrolled, his hands trembling ever so slightly. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. "You thought I didn't know," I whispered, my voice calm. "But I knew. I've always known." The silence that followed was louder than any scream could have been. He tried to speak, to explain, to justify. But I didn't give him the chance. I stood up, looked him in the eye, and said, "Happy birthday. This is the gift you gave yourself." Then I walked out, leaving him sitting there with his lies spread out in front of him. That should have been the end. But betrayal doesn't end so easily. Once you've tasted revenge, once you've felt that mix of power and release, it doesn't just fade. And deep down, I knew my story with him wasn't over yet. Walking out of that restaurant was supposed to be my final goodbye. I thought I had closed the door on him, on us, on the version of myself that believed love could fix everything. But closure doesn't arrive with one dramatic exit. It lingers. It whispers to you when the night is quiet, reminding you of the places you'd been broken. In the days after, I expected to feel free. Instead, I felt hollow. I had imagined revenge would heal me, that exposing his truth would stitch me back together. But the reality was more complicated. I still carried the weight of the memories, the ache of the trust one had given so blindly. And then, almost as if he couldn't stand the silence between us, he came back. It was late evening when my phone lit up with his name. For a moment, I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Every instinct screamed to ignore it. But curiosity has a way of opening doors you thought you had locked. His voice was soft, almost pleading. He said he wanted to talk, that he had made mistakes, that he missed me. He wanted to meet, to explain, to start again. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to cry. Instead, I simply agreed. Not because I believed him, but because I wanted to see for myself how far he would go. We met at a quiet cafe the following week. He looked different, not in appearance, but in energy. He wasn't the confident man I had once fallen for. His eyes darted around nervously, his smile faltering. He spoke about regret, about how the other woman wasn't what he thought she was, about how he realized I was the one he truly wanted. As he talked, I studied him. I watched the way his hands fidgeted with the edge of his cup, the way his voice cracked when he said my name. Once, I would have melted at those cracks, believed they meant sincerity. Now, I saw them for what they were, cracks in the mask he wore so well. When he was done, he looked at me with eyes that begged for forgiveness. I could almost see the script playing out in his mind. I would forgive him, we would reconcile, and he would once again have the best of both worlds. But what he didn't realize was that I had written my own script. And in mine, his story didn't end with redemption. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze, and said, "Do you know what the difference is between us? You thought love was a game. I thought it was a promise." Before he could respond, I slid a folder across the table. Inside were all the pieces of his double life, the screenshots, the details, the evidence of every lie he had spun. His face paled as he opened it, his hands trembling as the truth stared back at him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "This is who you are. Not who you pretend to be." He tried to reach for me, tried to explain, but I stood up before he could speak. "You wanted me to believe I wasn't enough," I said, my voice steady. "But the truth is, you were never enough for me." And with that, I walked out, leaving him surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. This time, I didn't look back. That was the real turning point, not the exposure, not the confrontation, but the moment I realized I no longer needed him. I no longer needed closure from him, because I had given it to myself. The months that followed were not easy, but they were mine. I poured myself into my career, into the things I had abandoned when I was too busy clinging to him. I traveled to places I had once only dreamed of. I reconnected with friends I had pushed aside. Slowly, I built a version of myself that wasn't defined by betrayal or heartbreak, but by resilience. He tried, more than once, to step back into my life. Messages, calls, unexpected appearances outside my office. Each time, he wore a new mask, remorseful, desperate, hopeful. But I had learned to see beyond the masks. I didn't respond. I didn't let him take even a moment of my peace. And yet, he remained haunted by what he had lost. Mutual friends told me he spoke about me often, that he regretted everything, that he couldn't understand how I had moved on so completely. That was my real revenge, not the evidence I had shown him, not the humiliation in the restaurant, but the fact that I no longer needed him. The fact that while he was still trapped in the cycle of his lies, I was free. There's a certain power in silence. in refusing to let someone back into the space they once destroyed. I learned that revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's as simple as living well while they crumble under the weight of their choices. I won't pretend I never think of him. Sometimes, late at night, his face flashes in my mind, the way he smiled, the way he betrayed me, the way he looked when the truth finally caught up with him. But the difference now is that those memories no longer hurt. They remind me of how far I've come, of the strength I never knew I had. I used to think love was about giving yourself completely to someone else. Now I know it's about balance, about building together while still standing strong alone. I used to think betrayal was the end of everything. Now I know it's only the beginning of something better, something truer. And revenge? Revenge isn't about breaking someone else. It's about refusing to let them break you. It's about walking away with your head held high, knowing that their choices don't define your worth. My story isn't about him anymore. It's about me. About the girl who once believed love was unshakable, who walked through betrayal, who stood in the fire and came out stronger. It's about the woman I became, the woman who no longer waits for someone else to complete her, because she has already completed herself. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the greatest victory isn't in making someone else fall. It's in rising so high that they can never touch you again. That's my truth. That's my ending. Not with him.